The night was the kind of quiet that felt heavy, like a thick blanket. Inside the 14th Precinct station house, the only sounds were the low hum of the fluorescent lights and the occasional tap of a keyboard. Officer Maya was finishing a report, her coffee gone cold. She was thinking about her own bed, just an hour away when a new sound cut through the silence dot. It wasn't a knock. It was a scrape. A desperate, scratching drag against the bottom of the heavy glass door. She looked up, her hand automatically moving closer to her radio. Outside, under the yellow glow of the streetlight, she saw a shape. A large dog, maybe a German Shepherd mix. Its fur was a dark, messy tangle. For a second, Maya thought it had rolled in mud. But the mud was streaked and wet, glistening under the light. And it wasn't brown. It was a deep, frightening red. Her breath hitched. Blood. That was a lot of blood. Then her eyes dropped lower. The dog wasn't alone. It held something carefully in its mouth. A bundle of dirty, flower-printed fabric. And from one end of that fabric poked out a tiny human foot. It was so small, so pale, and perfectly still. Everything slowed down and sped up at once. Maya's training kicked in. She was on her feet, her chair rolling back and hitting the wall with a thud. Her voice was tight but clear as she keyed her radio. Unit to front desk. Immediate assistance needed. Possible infant in distress. Animal involved? She didn't wait for the reply. Her focus was on that tiny foot. Was the child alive? She moved to the door, her heart hammering against her ribs. As she pushed the heavy door open, the cold night air rushed in. The dog didn't growl. It didn't bark. It just looked at her with eyes that held a world of trouble. It was trembling, from exhaustion or fear or cold, its sides heaving. It took one step, then two, into the bright light of the lobby. It moved with a terrible gentleness, its head held carefully level. Then, with a soft whine, it lowered its head and placed the blanket bundle right at Maya's polished black boots. It took a step back, watching her, its whole body tense. Maya dropped to her knees, her fingers flying to untangle the cloth. The blanket was wet in places, stained with dirt and that same awful red. She peeled the fabric back, and there was the baby. A little girl, her face streaked with grime, wearing only a soggy diaper. She was terribly cold to the touch. For one heart-stopping second, there was nothing. Then the baby's chest hitched. A small, weak cry, like the mew of a kitten, escaped her lips. "Alive," Maya whispered, a word full of relief and dread. She quickly shrugged out of her uniform jacket, wrapping the baby in the clean, warm lining, cradling her close. The baby's cry grew a little stronger, a hungry, confused sound. Officer Ben came rushing in, his hand on his holster, his eyes wide. He took in the scene, Maya on the floor with the baby, the massive, blood-covered dog standing guard a few feet away. "Ambulance is on the way," Ben said, his voice low. "What in the world?" The dog interrupted him. It let out another urgent whine and came forward, not toward the baby, but toward Ben. It nudged his leg firmly with its nose. Then it turned and trotted to the still open station door. It looked back at them, then out into the night. It came back to Ben and nudged him again, harder this time. "It's trying to tell us something," Maya said, rocking the baby. Ben looked at the dog, then at the blood matted in its fur. This wasn't the dog's blood. The baby, though cold and dirty, wasn't bleeding. That meant the blood came from somewhere else. Someone else stopped the dog, made a sharp, frustrated sound, and dashed to the door, its claws clicking on the tile. It stood there, a dark silhouette against the night, looking back at them. The message was clear as day. "Follow me." "This is crazy," Ben muttered. But he saw the same determined panic in the dog's eyes that Maya did. This wasn't a random act. This was a delivery, and now it was a plea. The paramedics arrived then, a whirlwind of efficiency. They took the baby from Maya, quickly assessing her as they prepared to rush to the hospital. The baby would be safe now. As the ambulance doors shut, the dog became even more agitated. It barked once, a sharp sound that echoed in the lobby. Maya, Ben said, making a decision. Get in the car. We're following that dog. Maya didn't argue. Something about the animal's silent, desperate communication left no room for doubt. This wasn't over. The dog had saved the baby. Now it was begging them to come help with whatever nightmare it had just left behind. They climbed into their patrol car. Ben started the engine, the headlights cutting through the darkness. The dog saw this and immediately spun around. It didn't wait. It took off running, a streak of shadow and matted fur, heading away from the streetlights, away from the safe, sleeping town, and down a narrow service road that led toward the old, forgotten farms at the edge of the county. The car moved slowly, following the tired but determined animal. Maya watched it run, a lonely creature on a mission. The blood on its coat told a story of violence. The baby in the ambulance was a story of salvation. And the road ahead, she knew, would hold the truth that connected them both. The quiet night was over. Now they were heading into the heart of the mystery. Guided only by a four-legged hero who'd already done the impossible, the patrol car moved slowly, its headlights painting two shaky paths of light on the cracked asphalt. Up ahead, the dog was a shadow that kept dissolving into the deeper darkness, then reappearing under the headlights. It never looked back. It just ran a steady, ground-eating trot that spoke of a deep, terrible purpose. Officer Ben kept both hands on the wheel, his eyes glued to the animal. "Where is it taking us?" He muttered, more to himself than to Officer Maya beside him. Maya watched the world change outside her window. The neat houses with their porch lights gave way to closed auto shops and warehouses. Then those fell behind too, and they were on a road lined with old leaning trees. The dog didn't hesitate. It took a left onto a dirt track that was more of a promise of a road than a real one. The car jolted and bounced, the suspension groaning. "This is crazy," Ben said again, but he didn't stop. The dog was their only compass. They drove for what felt like a long time. The only sounds were the crunch of gravel under the tires, the hum of the engine, and the staticky chatter of the police radio, which felt like it was broadcasting from another, more normal world. Maya reported their rough direction to the dispatcher in a low voice, asking for another unit to stage nearby, just in case. They had no address, no clue. Just a dog. Finally, the trees opened up. In a clearing stood a farmhouse. It wasn't the cozy kind. It was a 2-story box of peeling white paint and sad, dark windows. No lights were on. A sagging porch wrapped around the front. A single rusted truck sat silent in the overgrown yard. It looked less like a home and more like a place people had forgotten. The dog didn't go to the front door. It sprinted around the side of the house, vanishing into the blackness. Ben stopped the car, the headlights pointing at the side of the house, cutting a bright slice out of the night. They both got out, the doors clicking shut with sounds that were too loud. The silence here was different from the station. This was a thick, watchful silence. The air was cold and smelled of damp earth and something else, something stale. They drew their flashlights, the bright beams cutting through the dark. They followed the path the dog had taken, around to the back. Their boots crunched on dead leaves and broken bottles. There was the dog. It was standing at a heavy-looking back door, scratching at it softly, then looking back at them. Its whine was a high, thin sound of pure need. Ben signaled for Maya to go to one side of the door. He took the other. With his flashlight, he examined the door. It wasn't quite shut. The wood around the lock was splintered, like it had been forced open a long time ago and never properly fixed. He nudged it with his foot. It swung inward with a long, slow creak. The smell that drifted out stopped them both. It was the smell of a closed-up place, of old food, of neglect. And underneath it, something metallic. Something familiar to them both. The dog didn't wait. It slipped inside, disappearing into the gloom. "Police!" Ben called out, his voice strong and official in the quiet. "Anyone here?" Only silence answered. They stepped inside, flashlights sweeping the room. It was a kitchen, but it didn't look like anyone cooked there anymore. Dirty plates were piled in the sink. Empty cans littered a small table. The beam of Maya's light caught a smear on the floor near the doorway to the rest of the house. She moved closer, her heart sinking. It was a dark, dried streak. Blood. The dog was already at a door on the other side of the kitchen. This one was shut. It was pawing at the bottom. A frantic scrabbling sound on the old linoleum top. Ben approached the door. He saw there was a simple hook-and-eye latch on the outside, holding it shut. From the outside, someone had locked this door from the kitchen. His eyes met Maya's. She saw the same cold understanding in his face. This was bad. He unholstered his weapon. Maya did the same, covering him. With his free hand, he carefully, quietly slid the metal hook out of the eye. The door didn't burst open. It just sat there. Ben reached for the knob, turned it, and gave it a gentle push. The smell from the staircase that led down was worse. Damp, mold, and that coppery scent, stronger now. The dog bolted down the stairs, its nails clicking on the wooden steps.
They followed, flashlights pointing down into the darkness. The basement was one big, low-ceilinged room. Concrete floor, stone walls. It was cluttered with junk old furniture covered in sheets. Broken tools dot, but in the far corner, their beams of light found something else. A small, cleared space. A thin mattress on the floor. A bucket. And a figured-out old man was sitting on the mattress, propped against the wall. One of his wrists was locked in a pair of handcuffs, and the chain was looped around a thick old radiator pipe. He was terribly thin, his clothes hanging off him. His head was down on his chest, and his other arm, his forearm, was wrapped in a torn piece of cloth that was soaked through with dark, fresh blood. The dog was already there. It was licking the man's pale face, pushing its head under his limp hand, letting out little pleading sounds. The man stirred. His head lifted slowly, as if it weighed 100 pounds. He blinked against the glare of the flashlights. His eyes were clouded with pain and confusion. Then he saw the dog. A weak, shuddering breath escaped him. "You? You came back," he whispered, his voice rough and cracked from disuse. He tried to lift his cuffed hand to touch the dog's head, but the chain clinked, and he didn't have the strength. Then his eyes, swimming into focus, found the police uniforms. Realization dawned, and with it, a shot of pure terror. He tried to push the dog away, a feeble movement. "The baby," he croaked, the words tearing out of him. "Please. Is the baby safe? Did he hurt the baby?" He wasn't afraid for himself. He was afraid for the child. In that moment, Ben and Maya understood everything. The blood on the dog wasn't from a fight. It was from this man. The dog hadn't attacked. It had gotten close, gotten his blood on her, maybe from licking his wound, maybe from brushing against him as she pulled the baby from the crib. She had taken the scent of her wounded friend and the child he was worried about, and she had gone for help. Maya holstered her weapon, her professional calm finally breaking. Her voice was soft, full of a kindness the old man probably hadn't heard in a long time. "The baby is safe, sir. She's warm, and she's going to be just fine. Your dog saved her." The old man's face crumpled. He leaned his head back against the cold wall, tears cutting clean paths through the dirt on his cheeks. The dog leaned into him, whining softly, finally still. The job was done. Her people had come. The basement felt frozen for a long moment. The only sounds were the old man's shaky breaths and the soft, worried whimpers of the dog, who stayed pressed tightly against his side. Officer Ben was already on his radio, his voice low and urgent, calling for paramedics and more backup. The words elder abuse and possible hostage situation hung in the damp air. Officer Maya holstered her weapon and moved closer, her flashlight now pointed at the floor to avoid blinding the man. She knelt down, careful not to startle him. Up close, he looked even more frail. The skin on his face was thin like paper, stretched over his bones. The wound on his arm was an angry, messy gash that needed proper care. And soon. "Sir, help is on the way," she said, her voice calm and steady. "My partner is getting the paramedics. Can you tell me your name?" The man's eyes, watery and tired, moved from the dog to her face. It seemed to take great effort. "Thorn," he whispered. "My name is Thorn." "Okay, Mr. Thorn. I'm Officer Maya. This is Officer Ben. You're safe now." She glanced at the handcuff. "We're going to get you out of that, but I need to wait for the paramedics to look at your arm first, all right?" He gave a tiny nod, his attention drifting back to the dog. He managed to move his free hand enough to bury his fingers in the thick fur of her neck. "Good girl, Sheba," he murmured, his voice breaking. "You good girl." The dog, Sheba, thumped her tail once on the concrete floor, a dull, heavy sound. Ben came over, having finished his call. He shone his light around the rest of the basement, checking for any other immediate threats, but the place was still. His light fell on a few items near the mattress: a plastic cup of water, an empty bowl, a worn paperback book. This wasn't a recent imprisonment. This had been a life, shrunk down to a few square feet of concrete. "Mr. Thorne," Ben asked gently, crouching down beside Maya, "who did this to you? Is anyone else in the house?" A flicker of fear returned to the old man's eyes. He looked toward the ceiling, as if he could see through the floorboards. "My son," he said, the words barely audible. "He's upstairs. He's not right. He has problems. In his head." He swallowed hard. "He brought people. A young woman. And her baby, Lena." He said the baby's name with a kind of terrible tenderness. "Are they here now?" Maya pressed softly. "The woman. She ran. Last night. There was yelling. So much yelling. She just ran out the front door." His eyes filled with fresh tears. "She left the baby. She left little Lena in the crib upstairs. I heard her crying and crying. Then my son, he came down here. He was angry. He said it was my fault that I made her leave. He had a bottle in his hand. He swung it." Thorne glanced down at his wounded arm. "I fell. It was dark for a while. When I woke up, the cuff was on, and Sheba was here, licking my face. And I couldn't hear the baby crying anymore." He took a ragged breath. "I begged her. I said, 'Sheba, go check. Go check on the baby.' She went upstairs. She was gone a long time. I didn't know what to think. Then she came back down. She nudged me and whined and ran back up the stairs. She did it again and again. And then I didn't see her again until now." The story was coming together in painful pieces. Sheba had gone to check on the baby. She had found the baby alone, the house silent except for the sounds of the drunk and passed-out son upstairs. The dog's instincts, her loyalty to the man downstairs, and her simple care for the tiny human she lived with, had taken over. She had done the only thing she could think to do. The sound of a heavy thump from directly above them made them all jump. Sheba let out a low growl, the fur on her back rising. She positioned herself more squarely between the officers and her owner, staring up at the ceiling. Ben and Maya were on their feet in an instant, weapons drawn again. The upstairs had been silent. They'd assumed it was empty. They'd been wrong. "Stay with him," Ben said to Maya, his voice tight. He moved quickly, but quietly back up the basement stairs into the dark kitchen. Maya stayed put, her flashlight off now, listening. Her heart was pounding. She could hear Ben moving through the house above, the careful creak of floorboards. Then a shout. "Police, show me your hands." A crash, like a piece of furniture being knocked over. A deep, confused male voice yelling, "Get out of my house." Maya's training told her to stay and protect the vulnerable person in her care. Every other part of her wanted to go help her partner. She put a hand on Mr. Thorne's shoulder. "It's okay. Ben has it." The struggle didn't last long. There were more shouts, the sound of a brief scuffle, and then Ben's voice, clear and in control. "On the ground. Now. Hands behind your back." A few minutes later, Ben called from the top of the basement stairs. "Clear. I've got him secured." Soon after, the night outside was filled with new lights, red and blue spinning beams cutting through the trees. The paramedics and the backup unit had found the lonely farmhouse. The basement, once a prison of silence, became a hub of noise and light. 2 paramedics, a man and a woman, rushed down with a stretcher and a big kit. They gently moved Sheba aside, who watched every move they made with worried eyes, and began tending to Mr. Thorne. They cut away the bloody rag, cleaned and bandaged his arm, checked his vital signs. One of them produced a small key from a pouch, and with a quick click, freed the old man from the handcuff. The sound of the metal chain falling away was the sweetest sound Mr. Thorne had heard in weeks' dot as they carefully helped him onto the stretcher. He kept looking for Sheba. "My dog," he said, his voice a little stronger now. "Where's my dog?" Maya, who was giving a quick report to one of the newly arrived officers, nodded. "She's right here, sir." "She's not leaving you." Sheba, as if understanding, walked close to the stretcher as they carried Mr. Thorne up the stairs, through the wreck of a kitchen, and out into the cool, clean night air. The old man reached a trembling hand over the side, and Sheba licked it once, a quiet promise. Outside, in the whirl of activity, they saw Ben standing by a patrol car. A young man, disheveled and looking much older than his years, was in the back seat, his head in his hands. That was the son. Mr. Thorne looked away, a deep sadness on his face. One of the paramedics turned to Maya. "We're taking him to County General. For the wound, dehydration, malnutrition. He'll be there a while." Maya looked at the dog, then at the old man on the stretcher. "What about the dog?" she asked. The paramedic smiled a little. "You know, I think for this one we can make an exception. She's part of the treatment." And so, as they loaded Mr. Thorne into the back of the ambulance, Sheba, without being asked, jumped lightly in after him. She settled on the floor, next to the stretcher, laying her head near her owner's hand. The old man's fingers found her fur again, and he closed his eyes, a trace of peace finally smoothing his brow. The ambulance doors closed. The story at the farmhouse was over. But the story of the baby, of Lena, was still waiting. They knew her name now. They knew she was safe at their own precinct's hospital. But they needed to know why her mother ran, and if she would ever come back. The mystery had split into 2 paths, one leading to a hospital room, and the other to a painful family truth that was only just beginning to be told. The sun was just starting to think about rising, casting a pale gray light over the city. At the hospital, the world felt different. It was clean, bright, and quiet, except for the beep of machines. Officer Maya stood outside a room in the pediatric wing. Inside, the baby they now knew as Lena was sleeping peacefully in a clear-sided crib. She had been washed, fed, and checked from head to toe. The doctor said she was doing remarkably well, just hungry and a little cold from her adventure. A kind nurse had found a soft pink sleep suit for her. Maya watched the baby's chest rise and fall. She looked so small and ordinary now. It was hard to believe this quiet child was the same one wrapped in that bloody blanket just hours before. The mystery of her had softened, but it wasn't solved. Who was her mother? Why did she run? And would she come back for her little girl? Ben was down the hall, talking in low tones with a social worker, a woman with a tired but kind face. They were discussing what came next: foster care, paperwork, the cold, official steps that followed when a child is found alone. Ben walked over to Maya, his own face showing the long night. "Social services will take her later this morning," he said quietly, nodding toward the room. "They'll find a good temporary home for her." Maya nodded, but it felt like an incomplete ending. "Did we find anything at the house?" "About the mother?" Ben sighed. "Not much. A purse with an ID. A young woman. The picture. She looked scared, even in the photo. No family listed in the area. My guess is she was running from something even before she ended up at that farmhouse." He rubbed his eyes. "The son isn't talking much, just muttering about people betraying him. He's in a cell, sleeping it off." They stood there for a moment, two police officers in a hallway, feeling the weight of a story half told. The baby was safe. The bad guy was caught. But it felt hollow. The image of the old man, Mr. Thorne, asking about the baby with such terror in his eyes, wouldn't leave Maya. That was a connection. A thread. "Let's go see him," she said suddenly. "Mr. Thorne. He asked about her. He deserves to know she's okay." Ben agreed. They checked with the nurse, who told them Mr. Thorne was in a room on the 4th floor. He was stable, getting fluids and resting. They took the elevator up. The 4th floor was quieter. They found the room. The door was slightly ajar. Maya peeked in. Mr. Thorne was asleep, looking even smaller in the big hospital bed. The bandage on his arm was clean and white. And there, on a blanket on the floor right next to him, was Sheba. The dog was also asleep, but one ear twitched as they approached. She opened one eye, saw it was them, gave a slow thump of her tail, and closed it again. She was standing guard, even in her sleep. They were about to leave when the old man's eyes fluttered open. It took him a second to remember where he was. His hand moved, found Sheba's head, and the contact seemed to calm him. He turned and saw them in the doorway. "Officers," he said, his voice still weak but clearer. "We didn't mean to wake you, sir," Maya said, stepping in. "We just wanted to give you an update." "The baby?" He asked immediately, the same urgent love in his voice as in the basement. "She's perfect," Ben said, and he smiled a real smile for the first time that night. "She's downstairs. They've fed her. She's warm. She's going to be just fine." Mr. Thorne closed his eyes for a long moment, as if sending a silent prayer of thanks. When he opened them, they were wet. "Thank you. Thank you for telling me." He paused, gathering strength. Her mother. She was a lost soul. My son? He could be charming when he wanted. He brought her here, said they needed a place to stay. I didn't know how bad things were upstairs. He kept me down there. But I could hear. I could hear her crying. I could hear him yelling. She was so young. Just a girl herself, really. He took a sip of water from a cup on the tray. Last night, it got worse. He was in a rage about money. About me. He threw something. She screamed. Then I heard the front door slam. And then, silence. And then the baby crying. And I knew. I knew she had run. And I was down there, chained up, and I couldn't do a thing. His voice broke with the shame of it. I couldn't help that little baby. Sheba, sensing his distress, lifted her head and rested her chin on the edge of the mattress. But you did, Maya said softly, moving closer. You sent Sheba. You told her to check. She listened to you. You set the rescue in motion, Mr. Thorne. From that basement, you saved Lena's life. He hadn't thought of it that way. He looked at his dog, his friend. A little strength seemed to return to his face. She's always been a smart one. smarter than most people. They talked for a few more minutes. He told them how Sheba had shown up as a skinny pup years ago, how she'd been his only real company since his wife passed. She wasn't a pet. She was family. As they were leaving, the social worker from the pediatric floor appeared in the hallway. She had a file in her hand and a thoughtful look on her face. "Officers," she said, "I have an update. We've been able to contact the baby's maternal grandmother. She lives about 2 states over. She's been worried sick. Her daughter, the mother, had gotten mixed up with the wrong man. She confirmed it was Mr. Thorne's son. She ran away from home with him. The grandmother had no idea where they were. She's getting in her car right now to come here." It was the first piece of genuinely good news. A family member. A grandmother who cared. What about the mother? Ben asked. The social worker's face softened with pity. The grandmother said she'd been trying to get her daughter to leave him for months. She believes her daughter finally found the courage to run last night. She probably just snapped. The fear, the stress. She just ran. But she thinks, now that he's arrested, her daughter might be in hiding, scared to come forward. She's hoping she'll reach out now. Maya thought about the young woman, probably hiding somewhere, terrified, alone, and thinking her baby was still in that terrible house. She must be going through her own kind of hell. She looked back into Mr. Thorne's room. An idea, fragile but forming, took shape in her mind. The baby had a grandmother coming. She had a mother out there somewhere, lost and scared. And she had an old man here who had risked everything to worry about her. The official path was clear. The baby would go into the system, to a foster home, until things were sorted. But another path, a human path, was whispering. Would it be possible? Maya asked the social worker, her voice careful, for Mr. Thorne to see the baby? Before the grandmother comes? He's been so worried. And in a way, he's part of her story. The social worker looked surprised and considered it. She looked at the frail old man in the bed, at the loyal dog beside him. She looked at the 2 police officers who had followed a blood-soaked dog into the dark. It was highly irregular, but so was everything about this night. "Let me see what I can do," she said finally. Maybe just for a moment. Back downstairs, the sky outside the hospital windows was turning a soft pink. The night was over. A new day was beginning, and with it, the chance to mend the broken pieces this long, dark night had revealed. The story was no longer just about a rescue. It was becoming a story about what happens after, about fear, about family, and about the unexpected bonds that form in the aftermath of terror. The hospital hallway was bright with morning sun now, pushing back the shadows of the long night. Officer Maya felt a strange stillness inside her. The chase was over. The urgent danger had passed. What was left were the people, picking up the pieces. The social worker, true to her word, had made it happen. She pushed a small, clear crib on wheels into Mr. Thorne's room. Inside, wrapped in a soft white blanket, was baby Lena. She was awake, her dark eyes wide and curious, staring at the new ceiling lights. Mr. Thorne had been helped to sit up a little more. He looked terrified, as if this tiny child was the most fragile thing he'd ever seen. Sheba stood up, her tail giving a slow, questioning wag. She sniffed the air, then gently approached the crib. She didn't jump. She just rested her muzzle on the edge and gave a soft, sniffing investigation. The baby turned her head, looked at the big dog, and didn't cry. She just watched. "See?" Maya said softly from the doorway. "She knows a friend." With a trembling hand, Mr. Thorne reached out. His finger, rough and bent, touched the baby's tiny, curled fist. Lena's fingers opened and closed again, loosely around the tip of his finger. The old man's breath caught in his chest. A single tear traced a clean line down his cheek. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "You're safe now." It was just a minute, maybe two. But in that quiet room, with the dog and the old man and the baby, something settled. A circle closed. The baby he had worried over in the dark was here, warm and alive. He could see it for himself. The social worker gently wheeled the crib away, back to the pediatric ward where the paperwork of life would take over. Mr. Thorne watched her go, his hand now resting on Sheba's head. He looked emptied out, but peaceful. "Thank you," he said to the officers, his voice thick. "For following her, for not just shutting the door." Ben nodded. "We should thank you, sir. You raised a hero." He gave Sheba a scratch behind the ears. The dog leaned into his hand. Later that afternoon, the pieces began to move together. The baby's grandmother arrived. She was a woman in her 50s, with a kind, weary face that broke into tears the moment she saw Lena. She held the baby, rocking back and forth, murmuring over and over, "I've got you. I've got you now." She met with the police and the social worker. The story she told was a common, sad one. Her daughter had fallen for a charming, controlling man who quickly cut her off from everyone she loved. They'd moved around, disappearing. The grandmother had filed missing person reports, called every shelter, lived in constant fear. When the call came from the hospital, her fear had turned to a desperate hope. "And my daughter?" the grandmother asked, her eyes searching theirs. "Is there any word?" Maya explained. They had put out alerts. They had checked bus stations and homeless shelters. The mother was not with the son, he was in jail, and had no idea where she was. She was out there, alone. But now she was a missing person who was likely scared, not a suspect. The police were looking to help her, not arrest her. "When she finds out he's locked up," the grandmother said, a fierce hope in her voice, "she'll come out of hiding. She'll come to me. I know she will." With the grandmother present and ready to take custody, the cold machinery of the system moved faster. Lena would not go to a foster home. She would go with her family Dot before they left the hospital. Maya and Ben did one more thing. They brought the grandmother to Mr. Thorne's room. It was an unusual meeting. The old man, frail in his bed, the worried grandmother holding her granddaughter. "This is the man who helped save her," Maya said simply. The grandmother's eyes filled with fresh tears. She walked over, and without a word, she took Mr. Thorne's free hand. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for worrying about my girl when I couldn't be there." Mr. Thorne could only nod, too overwhelmed to speak. He looked at the baby, safe in her grandmother's arms, and then at Sheba, who was receiving a gentle pat from the grateful woman. A broken family and a broken old man, connected for a moment by a thread of kindness and a dog's courage. A week later, things had changed. Mr. Thorne was discharged from the hospital, but he couldn't go back to the farmhouse. It wasn't just a house of bad memories. It was a crime scene, and he had no strength to live there alone. The social worker found him a temporary room at a quiet assisted living home, and they made a special exception. Sheba could come too. She was officially a therapy dog now, with a little red bandana to prove it. Officer Ben drove them there. Sheba sat proudly in the back seat, her head out the window. Mr. Thorne, wearing clean clothes that hung loose on him, watched the town go by. The story made the local news, of course. "Hero dog saves baby." The station even did a short interview. But the real story wasn't in the headlines. It was in the small, quiet things. A few days after that, a call came to the precinct. A young woman, her voice shaky and young, asked for the officers who had been at the farmhouse. She was at a women's shelter 3 towns over. She had seen the news on a TV in the common room. She saw her baby safe. She saw the old man. She saw that he was in jail. Her mother, the grandmother, was already on her way to get her. The circle was almost complete. The mother was safe. The baby was with family. The man who caused the pain was behind bars, facing serious charges. Ben and Maya visited Mr. Thorne one last time at the assisted living home. He was sitting in a sunny garden courtyard, Sheba at his feet. He had more color in his face. He was talking about maybe growing some tomatoes in a little planter box. "We just wanted to say goodbye," Maya said, "and to let you know Lena's mother is safe. She's with her own mother now. They're all together." Mr. Thorne smiled, a real, quiet smile. "That's good. That's real good." He looked down at Sheba, who thumped her tail on the pavement. "We're all right here, too." As they walked back to their patrol car, Ben sighed. "You know, we followed that dog, expecting to find a monster. Or a victim." Maya looked back at the courtyard, where the old man was now tossing a soft ball for Sheba to gently nose. "We found both," she said. "But we also found something else. The monster was just a man. The victim was also a hero. And the hero," she nodded toward Sheba, "was just a dog who loved her family." The blood on her coat that night had told a story of violence. But the truth, the real story, was about love. It was about a love so strong it broke through locked doors, traveled miles in the dark, and led, finally, to a quiet garden in the sun, where an old man and his best friend could finally rest. The mystery was solved. But the feeling of it, the reminder of the quiet bravery that exists in the most unexpected places, that would stay with them for a long, long time.